back to the SPL. We have partnered with Naxonomic to make you the ultimate throne for when you're playing Smite. Now, I'm going to let you all know, a lot of bad stuff's been happening to me, man. My parents are no longer proud of me. My girl left me. I can't win any Smite games. And I think that's because I'm using this regular old bumming chair instead of my cool Naxonomic one. But don't worry, it's on the way. And if you don't want to suffer the same fate, then I suggest you pick one up. Use code SMITEMAX to get your free embroidery. And that way you can get your life back on track. The same way I'm hoping that mine will pick up out of the gutter I am currently in. Now, we have an excellent game that's going to be coming up here for you this next set that we're going to be looking at, PK versus eUnited. And to help me break that down, I am joined by Caleb Mifflin Sullivan, one of my good buddies and very trusted chair 2. Miff, what's up, man? How you doing? You ready for this set?
I'm doing well, man, and it sounds like you aren't, so let me bring the energy for you, man. I am excited for this set. When you think of the good teams in the league that don't happen to win games, it is PK and eUnited. They're great, they just haven't quite found their dubs yet, and you know what? One of them has to today.
That's a good point. Because they're playing each other, someone has to come out on top. And I think that that this matchup here, you can tell it's at the bottom of our schedule. We got some great ones coming up tomorrow. This is one of those matchups that I think could be really important down the line. When you're one of those teams that's not quite in the upper bracket, but not quite down there in the lower one, these are our sort of middle-of-the-road teams, how you compare up against each other is going to be critical down the line, Myth.
It really is. I mean, either one of these guys, if they drop this game right here, these are the ones that you absolutely have to win because it's the ones where you're 50-50 favored. Coming up against even eUnited against Ghost Gaming, we're going to vote for Ghost Gaming. eUnited versus Space Station, we're going to go for Space Station. But against PK, eUnited or PK both have about a 50% win rate, so this is going to be hugely impactful for your placements towards the end of the year.
And this is one myth where I think the junglers are going to decide just about every part of this. This is Scream up against Cuvo Fred, the upper echelon of junglers that we have, and junglers that like to do things their own way, especially Scream. I don't think that this man checks a tier list. He's never made one. He's looking for Bastets. He's looking to play his own stuff via wheelages, those type of things. I think the only person that has played this circuit up until this point, and he made it look excellent, Myth. What are you expecting from Scream here today?
Look, Scream is one of the OG Arachnes. My man was playing it before she was good. My man was playing it before she even had her current kit. I really do expect with recent itemization changes, he might be the first one to show us that Arachne in the SPL, and he might make it look incredibly strong. I'm also really expecting Hurrywin to have to dig deep into his pockets. We've seen now that teams are willing to ban out that Yanis. Maybe PK does that as well.
It certainly could be a good strategy here for him because you're right. I mean, this squad, this eUnited team, obviously not just reliant on Scream. Hurrywin has been playing really well. Remember, they've moved Snoopy over to the support position, and Guy J has looked great for them as the hunter so far. I don't think he's necessarily cost them any games. It's just that they're really up against a tough task. Obviously, the defending world champs in Pittsburgh Knight, and, as I like to say, the most patient team in the league. If you misstep, then they will wait till 45 minutes, punish you once, and take the dub, and they won't even think twice about it.
Yeah, it's really... PK's wins, it's almost as if they're spitting on you. Oh, you made one mistake at 18 minutes? See you in 35 when I take your Titan's life. And I think it's really good that you highlight this new duo lane for eUnited. With Snoopy going over to support and Guy J being new to the league, they're going to be playing against some of the most veteran players we have. Zatman's been playing this game for a long time. Neilma is potentially the best Khepri in the league, a very aggressive support as well. He's up there, so they have to prove themselves now that they're, one, Snoopy's able to gel in his new role, and two, Guy J's able to gel in his new league.
You're right, man, and I talked about that jungle matchup earlier, Myth. I think that's still going to be critical here, man. Cuvo Fred is always in the conversation with me for best jungler in the world, best player in the world. He's so consistent, but I do think that attribute, that consistency, has struggled so far in Phase 2. Usually, you can expect Cuvo Fred to be active early, to be that carry for you throughout the game, and never be the one to fall behind a little bit. They're going to need that Cuvo Fred to show up here.
I agree, and we haven't even talked about this man, but Paul, he's been having a little bit of a slow start in Phase 2, but he is this lightning rod for all sorts of aggression. But Cuvo is a fantastic person to highlight just because of how well he's able to control the pace of the game when he gets off to a good start. And he was one of the pioneers in Season 7 to really camp out that soul lane, so I imagine he's going to have really good synergy there.
Yeah, I think just about wherever it is that Cuvo Fred chooses to go, good things should follow him. This guy's almost unmatched in terms of his output in the jungle. So that's why we had to sit down with him earlier today and see how he was feeling before this match.
All right, guys, I'm here with Kivo Fred, jungler for the Knights, and we're talking to him about his matchup against eUnited. I kind of want to zoom out. I want to look at the meta first, Fred. Lots of eyes, I think, have been on the jungle here up to this point. It's the strongest role. Some of these things starting to, maybe swirl. Where do you think the jungle role stands in the current meta?
I think right now, like with the recent items and stuff like that, jungle is definitely pretty strong. Like with Golden Blade, and we see the introduction to the Serrated Blade, Serrated Edge, I believe. So I think there's definitely some older picks we haven't seen in a while that's been popping up in the jungle, which I personally think is super fun. Just having the variety there and being able to pull them out definitely makes jungle a super strong role. So right now, I'd say jungle is, has a big impact for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And you've looked good in the jungle, to be sure, through your first few games. And actually, before we kind of focus on eUnited, your next series of games, including eUnited and some that you started off the phase with, difficult. I mean, you start off this phase with SSG, Radiance, now eUnited and Ghost. Those are your first four. That's difficult. Is that something the team figured would be a difficult stretch, or do you guys approach these games more on a, one game at a time sort of basis without looking too far forward?
We're definitely looking like one game at a time. For example, this week we had Radiance and today eUnited. So we just came in and we just looking to do one game at a time and prepare for one game at a time. So we don't really think too far ahead and get ahead of ourselves. We just want to win the up-and-coming game.
Hey, and the up-and-coming game is eUnited, and it's kind of a broken record talking point, I think, from me and some of the other guys as well. But they are good, but inconsistently good. They lose, but they don't get blown out. What do you think that is? Do you have any idea maybe what makes these guys unable to find these consistent wins?
Yeah, that's what I think is so scary with United, is that they have the potential to just pop off and like be a world-class team on any given day, and some other days they just don't have that that snap or that click, that makes them so scary. So we're just looking to play our game and do the best we can, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I agree. When you go into a game like this, sometimes you just have to focus on yourself and adapt as the game moves on. Final thoughts, more individual matchup for you. How do you think Scream has played up to this phase, or up to this point so far? I mean, he's kept eUnited in some games, I think. What do you think the matchup with Scream is going to look like?
I think Scream is just a really good and talented player. He can be super unpredictable, which is both. Sometimes it catches you off guard, and sometimes I think he might catch himself off guard. But Scream is a really, really strong player, and he's hard to predict as an opponent. So I'm just excited to play them and see what happens.
Yeah, it seems to be a similar theme. Hard to predict in the jungle, hard to predict eUnited as a team in general. Fred, it was great sitting down talking to you. Best of luck today, and we'll chat soon.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Sounds like Cuvo Fred agrees with how important that versatility for eUnited is, the unpredictability in the jungle role in particular, but for them as a team. Mifflin, I mean, I know you've had some struggles up against eUnited just in terms of predicting where the picks are going. Imagine trying to play against them. How is this team in terms of unpredictability just in general?
I mean, it's just that every single god that they pick can go into multiple roles, and even when they do pick certain gods, it's off meta. I mean, we've talked about Scream, he's pulling out Bastet, he's pulling out all these random picks in Phase 1. When you talk about Hurrywind, he decided to put all of his eggs in the Janus basket, considering Persephone's really meta, Oleron's really meta, he could have practiced any of those. Instead, he decided, I want to be the best Janus in the world, power to him, he became it. But that's really what it is about eUnited. You don't know what they decided to practice on any given week, and they can come in with a completely different strategy. Back in Phase 1, I like to call them the conflict adverse team, because they would play Horus and Janus every single game and just run to different objectives. The next week, they're playing Poseidon. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, Miff, I think you're touching on a really good point as we move into the picks and bans for game number 1. I don't know that I'm 100% locked in on what eUnited's identity is, and I think that's because they're not 100% locked in on it. Back in Phase 1, we did think they were sort of the moving around the map, the dropship team, right? But we have not seen them quite solidify into anything with Snoopy in support and with Guy J in Hunter just yet, but it's still early. This is a young team in terms of how long they've been playing together, so I think they've got plenty of time to solidify into some kind of style. So far, though, we're seeing that whatever their style is, they do not want to have to deal with any healers. They choose to band the hell away from Paul, the Hellmane himself.
That's crazy. That's just what Paul brings to the table. He's going to absorb a lot of the bans, but dedicating a ban to Hell here means that PK can leave open some magical hunters, make sure they get themselves an Oleron or a Freya. Heimdall's going to likely get through the ban phase. I mean, Persephone's been very strong. Every single time you dedicate one of your bans to a target ban like this, you're opening yourself up to be onslaughted by the meta.
And remember, this is the team that we've seen play Cthulhu support more than anyone. I believe Snoopy has already played it twice for this eUnited team, and we have not seen a lot of Cthulhu bans so far. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Cthulhu does come back in. Do you expect we'll see it here, Myth? And if so, you all right with it going back into Snoopy's hands?
I mean, I love Cthulhu support. It brings you unparalleled amounts of just lane control, space control. If you decide to team fight ever, you better pray Cthulhu already used his ultimate or misclicked it in the base, because it's really hard to miss. You know when Cthulhu ultimate is down. I mean, he's got such a good team fight potential. I'm surprised to see PK ban out Ymir, especially considering if we know that Snoopy's looking to play Cthulhu, there's no way the Knights don't know.
Well, it hasn't exactly looked great so far for him. I think in the later game team fight portions, he's been nasty with it, but in other stages, there have been some struggles. We've talked a lot about this Cthulhu, but so far it's not come to fruition. Instead, eUnited get to pick who I think is still the best god in the game right now in this Freya over there in the long lane. I love this. If they're handing this over to Guy J, the things have already gotten a lot harder for the Knights.
They have, but they do get something in response. Freya might be the best magical hunter for just straight up killing gods, but Oleron is the best magical hunter in a team fight. Sanctified Field is a no-play zone. I don't care who you are, how many beads you want to proc, don't stand inside of it. You're moving at half speed, and he's auto-attacking you like 86 times a second. Pairing that with a Hercules, if this Oleron does go over into that long lane, that's going to be a very safe matchup for him. He's going to have that brick wall of a Hercules, driving strike, create space, and anything you need, set up, get some ganks, rotate out, heal up. Oleron's going to be incredibly safe over there.
Whew, thank God. We really gambled on this Cthulhu pick earlier with all that talk on him before he was picked, so we loved eUnited paying us off. We'll talk about it in a moment, Myth, because this Hercules being picked up for Neil, I think deserves some attention as well. Back in their Worlds run with PK1, I think Neil was the one whose play elevated the most, and it was with some of these aggressive picks. He's not quite to a Roaring PVM level, but he is damn close. His Hercules is scary to me, too.
It really is. I mean, if you're able to land the Earthbreaker, if you're able to land Driving Strike consistently, you've mastered Hercules. It's not easy to do to find those pools at least 60, 70% of the time, but Neilma is certainly one of those players who's able to do it. And Neilma is a little bit more support-minded. When you think of Aurora and PBM's Hercules, it's almost this pseudo-secondary jungle where they're just constantly looking for damage. Neil's always looking to facilitate his team, always looking to peel out the backline. He doesn't play it nearly as aggressively as those other two players, but when you have these hyper carries on your team like Oleron, you can afford to play that style knowing that as long as Oleron makes it to late game, he should be able to outscale anyone in the match, except if eUnited has Freya.
Which unfortunately they do. Going to make things hard for them later on. They pair the Achilles alongside the Hercules, so right now the Knights looking plenty aggressive. But as we expected, the Cthulhu over there for eUnited, Myth, alongside this Neath, who I think certainly does deserve some more play. You like these first three picks for eUnited so far?
You're going to ask me if I like Freya and Cthulhu? Yeah, I love that. Neath as well is pretty strong. That global ultimate means that Oleron over there in the duo lane, likely not going to be nearly as safe as he wants to be. Neath's recent buffs make her a lot safer in mid. That backflip is going to be much faster, an actual good escape tool now. And her trade potential with the Unravel, stealing away some of that attack speed, going to be very nice for her as well. I imagine that Neath will go towards mid. She'll likely look for the Transcendence and then just use the Unravel for sustain in lane. I really do like what eUnited's got here.
I like this Uller ban as well. We have seen Oleron go mid sometimes, and Uller is largely considered one of the best answers you can get up against a Freya because he's so much pressure. They also ban away the Robin, another early game character they don't want to deal with. Meanwhile, PK take towards the tanks. They ban away the Xing Chen as well as the Amaterasu, but then they pick up the Set. What an aggressive jungler they've now added. Between the Hercules, the Achilles, and the Set, everyone they've picked is capable of killing you.
Look, man, if you want to just have one late game character and then have the rest of your team be just early game aggression incarnate, that means that you really do have a 4 protect 1 king protection comp, and PK is going to be the type of squad that can execute on it perfectly. You highlighted earlier how they're incredibly patient. This draft might be able to work with that, but eUnited taking that Ao Kwong, man. I love this pick. We saw it in the SCC earlier today. The damage output is ridiculous. The ability to solo out objectives, unparalleled. Recent itemization changes make him just really good at finding those executes on his own. This Ao Kwong, I'm excited to see it. And then a Morgan as well. Spicy match.
Oh, I don't like this for eUnited. Now PK have their own Ao Kwong on their side. That is equally scary from where I'm sitting. And I know Ao Kwong doesn't use the full mage ADC build, but he likes Hekate and Typhon's Fang just fine. Those are great items for him right now, Myth. I think that eUnited have gotten themselves an excellent draft at this point.
They really do. My main concern for eUnited is how well they're going to be able to use this spray in the late game. Cthulhu's lockdown is good once he uses that transformation, but Sans ultimate, he's not really going to have the most confirmable CC. Sun Wukong should be looking to shut down this Ola run, but 72 transformations is very easy to avoid if Ola run uses that knockup or even Sanctified Field. And then you're just a Sun Wukong standing near an Ola run, not exactly where you want to be. And this Morgan is going to be such a strong pick. One of the best gods for shutting down Freya. If she goes for the Polynomicon Soul Reaver build, attack Freya out of stealth, she might not even get a chance to use her beads before she's dead.
Morgan presents an individual and unique threat, both as a mage assassin, which is how I prefer to think of her, and then as whoever she transforms into. I expect this game one to be exciting. Let's get down for eUnited versus PK.
Thank you so much, Finch, Gore, and Aggro here. And Aggro, I feel like a kid in a candy store right now. There's so many interesting picks to pick up, talk about, look at, see what they can do. But I guess I'm going to hone in on the one that's freshest to this week, and it is this Ao Kwong. You know, we've been talking about Hekate, we've been talking about the rings. How do you feel this Ao Kwong's going to look today?
I like it a lot. I do think that Ao Kwong is very playable in this current state, but check out what Scream is starting. He's starting not Ring 1 or Tiny Trinket, as we've seen some players go for. Instead, starting off with that the very beginning of the Imperial helmet. There is a lot of physical on the other side. I mean, he's going to have to contest with Neil a whole lot, Cuvo and Scary, but I wonder where Scream is going to take this early. Maybe a Celestial Legion helm is the call, but this is going to delay that Ring of Hekate pretty late into the build, and Ao Kwong's a god that really feels like he needs to get those items online. That's one of his biggest weaknesses, I think, is how much he struggles before he gets those items online. But that's why I love it in conjunction with this Neath from Heroin, because this is a classic combo. I mean, this used to be running competitive in the SPL all the time. My team in the SCL used to play it a lot, where you have this god in Ao Kwong that doesn't gank particularly well. He doesn't have a whole lot of setup for his ganks. He needs to get those executes, but often needs someone to get the CC immunity out from whoever he's ganking before that happens. What better way to augment a weak ganker than a global ultimate that does guaranteed damage and stuns them for you? So it really sets you up in solo as well. So I think that the Neath Ao Kwong combination is one that has a lot of potential to succeed.
Especially, yeah, like you said, once level 5 hits, you have to factor in the execute from the Ao Kwong, the Neath ult coming through at any point. A global stun always seems pretty good at any given time, and especially now that she's helping balance out that Freya, which we've seen over there, the Cthulhu as well over in that duo lane, has been an interesting talking point. It wasn't very successful over here in support, but eUnited opted to bring it back over here for Snoopy alongside Gaijay. And this is with some nerfs coming in for him. Do you think that this Cthulhu Freya lane is going to struggle early on to the Ola run Hercules?
I think it can, for sure, just because Hercules has so much kill potential, basically by himself. He doesn't need a whole lot of help in order to get that done, as Hurry in trouble in mid actually decides to use the beads, when maybe the backflip would have sufficed, but really wanted to make sure he was staying safe. I do think that Cthulhu in support looked a lot less impactful than what we saw from him in solo lane, but look at the teams on the standings in the way that those went. I mean, it was support Cthulhu for eUnited and Snoopy, and Neilma and PK, and then solo Cthulhu for Final K, Ghost on top of the standings, and Yarkor, who Seg was near the top as well. So you could say that's coincidence, you could say it's not, but it seems like the better teams seem to prefer it in the solo lane. I do think that Snoopy has a little bit to prove with taking it again into the duo lane here, just because of how he and Neil struggled whenever this pick was in support.
Yeah, it's going to be a question of what it can bring And we've been talking about it a lot. We talked about it yesterday on the waiting room, and I think that it can have its merits over here, but it is up to Snoopy right now to prove that more than anything. Looking towards the other side instead of...
Real quick, Gore, sorry to cut you off. Don't
go
forget
for it.
that on SBL Waiting Room, we had the chat weigh in on what they thought was stronger, Cthulhu support or solo lane, and it was like 94% said solo lane. It was a very small percentage that thought support was the better place for Cthulhu. So Snoopy trying to prove a large majority of chat wrong.
I mean, it's one of those things. If it works, it works. But and I said this earlier. I can't remember what I was talking about. But the numbers, if they play against you, the number, they speak louder than whatever your opinion can be. Just because if he's not winning in support, he's just not winning in support. So Snoopy, maybe with a lot of work cut out for him coming ahead as they're looking to try and hit that level 5 mark, a little behind their counterparts over there in Zapman and Neil. So a little bit of exercise they're going to have to do in order to catch up. But I was going to turn, the conversation. We've looked at eUnited, pretty solid draft top to bottom, and you had complimented the synergy that they're going to have together. And I want to look at the Knights now. I mean, Set is not something we've seen be very successful today, let alone in the last couple of weeks. I think it's 1 win out of 3 games played total, Asbra being the one who's brought all of those through. How do you like it here for Cuva?
A little surprised that it's for Cuvo, honestly. This doesn't feel like a god that really meshes with Cuvo's playstyle a whole lot, but I do think that Set can be successful in the jungle at the SPL level. He has a lot of tools. I mean, his gank potential isn't phenomenal, but especially in things like duo lane, where you just have a long way to walk in order to get to safety, his unmatched movement speed over a long duration is really hard to deal with. I think that he can fight well up against the Ao Kuang, but it's just a little bit feast or famine. You have to all-in commit. And right now, with Shell being really strong, with a lot of carry players picking up that upgraded Shell, with Hide of the Nemean Lion being very strong, I feel like auto attack assassins they have to be really good in order to see play. And I'm not sure that Set is really good. I think he's good, but I don't know if he really passes the barrier like maybe Nemesis does for what her potential is, even if she's getting her auto attacks blocked.
They simultaneously got a bunch of cool new items to play with in the jungle and lost their ability to really showcase themselves at the pro level because of all these block stacks that are available. But as it is right now, you have to leave that to Cuvo to maybe pick up and showcase what it can do. It's the Knights overall that are getting a little more aggressive. Still no kills on the board, and honestly, I kind of expected Neil to be maybe even hyper-aggressive with this Hercules, but going for the red buff, deep invades. Look at the ward coverage on the left-hand side of the map. I mean, eUnited can't walk in their own jungle without someone on the Knights knowing about it, and I think you're going to see that here as Snoopy gets pushed back. Sanctified Fields trying to lock him down, but Snoopy's up in the ult. He's pretty low, and this Freya damage is making it hard for the rest of the team to chase him down, but Paul's over here, and Paul's going to be able to chase this one down. Transforms over into that Set. Now is looking to try and chase down Guy J as well under this tier 1. The transformation cancels out, and it seems like he's not quite confident enough to dive that tier 1 just yet. So it's going to be a first blood in a good zone here on the dual lane of eUnited.
A fantastic opportunity by Paul and a perfect rotation in. I mean, Snoopy, I think, does the right thing in that scenario. He goes in not knowing that Paul is there, wants to look to play aggressively, trades 2 ults for his, including Sanctified Field, which makes Zapman basically a free gank on that left-hand side. But then with the Paul transformation ends up being a little bit too aggressive. But the initial play, I think, was fine for United. They just couldn't keep track of where Paul was. And Hurwin's ultimate was on cooldown. It just now came back up. I didn't see where he fired off that World Weaver initially, but you really want to be converting on your first, you want to get 2 kills or assists basically off your first 3 World Weavers. That you kind of feel like those should be more guaranteed, because that ultimate loses value as the game goes later and later. It is harder and harder to find a good opportunity to use World Weaver once you get out of the laning phase. And in SMITE, the laning phase really isn't that long these days because of how much gold and experience is on the map. It accelerates teams into a point where they can group up really effectively pretty quickly. And so if you're not finding purchase with those first few World Weavers, it can cause problems for you. eUnited hasn't been able to use it to find a kill or an assist quite yet in this game.
And probably one of the most difficult abilities to charge up when you're in the middle of a team fight. Roots you where you're standing, you're already pretty squishy. Backflip, even though it's been enhanced a little bit in terms of speed, it isn't really the best disengage for you. So Neath is going to have to, like you said, get those going a little bit faster, but is starting up that Transcendence, or already stacking on it, I should say. And now it's going to be actually rooted down. Almost all of his health disappears right there for Hurry, but he's charging up the ult, trying to question whether or not he should stun. Snoopy's here, and you've got Scream coming up, but it's just not enough space for them. The tower being there just wards them off too early, and they can't get that successful gank.
But you get the beads off from Cuvo in exchange for Heroine's ult. Again, an ultimate from World Weaver that doesn't end up in a kill. At least that one gets the relic there for the Pittsburgh Knights jungler. Maybe the earlier one did as well that we just didn't notice. But so far, this Neath pick has not brought what you're hoping for. It's either kills on the side lanes or pressure in mid. And it's really done neither for eUnited so far. Heroine down a little bit in XP and down in terms of map impact because Paul picked up that first blood.
And well, you had mentioned that Celestial Legion helm. Something that we were kind of talking about with Scream is realistically the fact that what we're seeing is what we expected. Not only did he not go rings early on, but he hasn't been able to impact much. Ao Kuang isn't necessarily known for his levels 1 through 10 even. But now he's finished that helm, he's gone into the boots. Is this a transition, the kind of build that you think is going to sustain him well into the late game, or does it feel like he's just putting off his damage spike way too long?
Yes to both. I think he is putting off his damage spike a little bit too long, but at the same time, this is not really the point where you want your Ao Kuang to be focused on. He's a late game god. I mean, he wins any 1v1 late game pretty much. He becomes pretty much unstoppable then. But I just think that with the Neath, you give yourself so many more opportunities than without it. And I think that there could have been better options for aggressive picks. For Scream, you could have gone Bancrofts, you could have gone Typhons, you could have gone Hekate right away, because you have this Neath to set you up in mid.
All right, now halfway down is the Gold Fury. The Knights are just gonna take it. They're not a contest, nothing from eUnited, no one even looks over there. They just go in, take the Gold Fury, get themselves a nice lead, and walk back to do their own buffs. Maybe an invade over here in the jungle to try and get something back, but kind of surprised, I would say, from both teams there. I feel like eUnited maybe not able to sniff it out, but the Knights just full committing to that 10-minute Fury really opens up a lot of doors for them to start cultivating a bigger lead.
I think that a lot of credit deserves to go to Chuckles, the coach for PK, and just this PK draft, because it's really stopped what eUnited wanted to do pretty well, as a World Weaver comes out too early from Heroine that time, and no chance Scary D falls on that gank. It just feels like eUnited was thinking, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick this hyper carry late in Ao Kuang. We got another option for that in Freya there for Guy J. But then we're going to be able to team fight really well if they try and group up, because even though they've got Hercules, they're going to be running out our buffs. We've got a Cthulhu, baby. We're going to pop him in all these team fights, and he's going to be doing a lot of damage and unkillable with that ultimate. But then PK just drafted a Morrigan, and now they also have a Cthulhu. And that's really stopped eUnited from being able to be aggressive.
Well, now it's going to be Snoopy who's up in his ult here in mid, trying to smack down Cuvo, goes for the dive, but it's going to be Variety who gets credit for the kill. Now they're going to be able to burn down Neil almost like it's nothing to eat through this Hercules. The rotation from the solo laner working out perfectly for them here, and the Knights are falling a little bit further behind, at least in the kill department, as their aggression didn't pay off, and they kind of started that engagement.
Yeah, not a great decision, I think, there by PK to dive the tower. I think Neil was trying to get the beads out from Heroine with that Blink driving strike and did some good damage, nearly found him with the Earthbreaker. But then Cuvo going into the tower range was a bit ambitious.
Well, now Snoopy looking to get locked down. Paul trying to find him, but the transformation takes just too long, and the execute comes through from Screen in return. And now, Zapman, you're all alone. He wants to chase him down. The bloodlust is there. Unfortunately, the cooldowns and the follow-up is not. So Zap still gets to walk away this time around. But I think what we're seeing out of eUnited now is that willingness to participate. They kind of recognize, hey, we can win a fight. And now they can get it rolling a little bit more. It feels confidence more than anything is coming out of them after that first victory.
I think it has to, because if anything, it's too much confidence from the boys of the Pittsburgh Knights, because they overstepped twice in a row. First it was mostly Fred with a little bit of Neil, and then Paul thinking that he's got the damage. And look, he was close to killing Snoopy, but that play is never worth it, Paul, for Snoopy anyways, because Paul was level 13 when he fell. That was a huge bounty for Scream to pick up. You shut down the enemy mid laner, you get an execute for yourself. Doesn't matter anymore with that passive, but still to get that Alquang an early kill like this is certainly a good look now for United, who were kind of rolling over and not doing a whole lot in the early game, but they seemed ready to pounce. You know, they're lying in wait. You know, they're not just sitting there doing nothing.
Well, right now the Knights seem to be playing objective control more than anything. They get that Gold Fury, now the Pyromancer with relative ease. But, you know, it does feel like there's a little lack of, I don't know if I want to use the term synergy, but they have all of this vision. I wanted to compliment them. Right now it's maybe not as abundant, but before they had a ton of wards in the left jungle, then they added a ton of wards in the right jungle. There was almost nowhere eUnited could go, either camp or lane for a gank, without the Knights knowing about it. And it feels like you have all of this intel to help slow them down. The minute those wards disappeared is when we start seeing eUnited find these fights. So yes, the vision helped, but they weren't doing anything with it really on the side of the Knights either, save for that Gold Fury. Now the question is if Neil can find anything while he's out here fishing. Maybe Snoopy, if you can lock down this Cthulhu. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be worthwhile. Also, you just don't have the damage for it.
No, not at this point. I mean, Neil has a good amount of stacks on that Thebes, working towards a sledge for himself as, again, in comes the ultimate, but this time Scream's here to follow up.
Well, Scary D trying to stay alive here. Snoopy, half health, goes into the ultimate once again to try and stay, and he is swinging hard here against the members of the Knights. But it's whether or not they can actually do anything to fight back. Variety going to go up onto the cloud and jumps right back down. Cuvo forced to use his beads to try and run away. The damage follow-up isn't enough to get the kill, but he's TKO'd. He's out of there. Paul, now the one in trouble. Forced to run away. One hit is all it's going to take to be able to find him. They're going to have to lock him down. Whirlwind finds the last hit on that one. 2-0-2 for the mid laner. Scream looks at a bunch of low health bars, but they're backing off here for the Knights, so eUnited going to take the one kill, call it a win.
Huge shell came through from Whirlwind there because Paul had a great angle in to that team fight, but initially as soon as he transformed into that set, that shell came through from Hurry. It's already upgraded, and that kept he and Snoopy alive on the back line, where the rest of the team, Variety and Scream, were really hitting the gas pedal to get in there. And you see the potency of this Wukong and Cthulhu front line. I mean, those two kept PK pretty busy for a long period of time, and then Scream was right there to follow up. I mean, you get the beads out from Fred, both relics out from Paul. You kill Paul again. That's twice now that he's bitten off a little bit more than he can chew on these transformations. And just like that, United's in a spot where they feel like they could actually be the aggressors.
Snoopy doing his best to try and stop Neil from being Neil, and a really good World Weaver there to stun out this Hercules from getting his push and his combo off. The boulder comes down, but that's going to be Gaijay getting credit for the kill. Snoopy loses his life, so it's support for support. The damage now looking to come through, but Scary D, being the aggressor, forces out Whirlwind early on in this fight. Still picking up that kill, forcing Knights into an awkward position. Big for eUnited, but maybe biting off more than they can chew trying to get that Fury.
A little bit ambitious from them for sure, but now PK might be returning the favor. Variety, no ultimate, but does have that blink to get involved.
And they're not done yet. Scary D's going to get a good stun onto Whirlwind. The back foot can only get you so far. It's right into Paul's grasp there. Now he's going to go ahead, transform into the set, get himself out of there. But Gaijay has no mana. Now he has no life. Double kill for the mid laner on the Knights as he just runs it down in the jungle. And now that Fury could potentially be free. They're a little low health, a little low mana. They're going to start it up. Variety's still in the neighborhood, so it's a very dangerous game to be playing. And he wants to get aggressive here, and it's going to end up costing him his life. Paul once again burns him down. Zapman's the trade for it, but Snoopy comes back, ults in, looks for this damage. The knockup is good, but it's still a 4v2. I don't know what you're trying to fight here, eUnited, but it's not going to find you a win. Snoopy, last man standing for his team, and it's only going to take a little bit of time for the Knights to get rid of him, clean up this Primal Fury, and find themselves a pretty solid lead after that fight.
Man, that was an extended engagement by that Primal Fury. Take a breath, Goremizer. Finally, PK is able to get a little bit of a window in order to actually do it. And Paul gets all the cleanup kills there and plays that fight very well as the Morrigan, but really the credit deserves to go to Scary D because he created an infinite amount of space for Paul to work with. He forces Heroin's backflip after doing 60% of his health by himself, and Scary never used his ult in that fight. Didn't need to, because everyone kind of died around him. This Soul Leader into Sledge build is so strong in the damage department, but it does leave you a little bit more squishy. But Achilles doesn't really mind that so much because his 2 is so nuts in terms of all the stats that it gives you. You get more protections and percentage damage that you can use at the same time. So the percent damage goes way through the roof when you built this much power in comparison to what solo laners were building before. And you don't feel quite as squishy as a lot of the other solo laners. So I think Achilles is an underexplored pick right now. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, there was the World Weaver from Heroin. Takes a lot of damage in the process of trying to get that ult off and set up some kill for his team. The same can be said for Paul, though, as he got aggressive there. It seems like ult for ult Knights are just able to come out on top because of their draft. And, well, eUnited are trying to make up for that in any way they can. Neil gets aggressive. Again, good World Weavers so far from Heroin, but you had kind of said it early on. If you don't really get much out of that first one, they slowly stop mattering as the game goes on, and it feels like that last one especially was just kind of shrugged off easily by the Knights. Now it's up to Neil to try and defend a Pyromancer, but, you know, they've been only able to do so much in terms of aggression on eUnited.
Really good reset, though, there, knowing the boulders coming in. That's going to guarantee the Pyromancer for them. I think that eUnited is in an awkward position now because Paul is so huge on this Morgan selection. I mean, the man's level 19 at 19 minutes into the game, and then you still have this Ola run that you're going to have to deal with later on in the game, too. I just don't feel like there's an easy way for eUnited to start to turn this game around unless you can catch Paul out of position again, which I don't think is really going to happen. He doesn't have that problem too often. Or you're going to be able to take Scary D out of these fights really quickly. But Scream is gone now for the Toxic Blade. This shows me that he wants to be a little bit more focused on Fred, trying to 1v1 Fred in the backline in these fights. Maybe on the Zapman with this Ola run. The Toxic Blade helps you a lot there too. But no Hecate for Scream, no Typhon's Fang. The Telkines gives him a lot of damage. I don't think the Toxic Blade's bad. I just think that I'm not sure that it's really building for your biggest problems in the composition right now, which in my mind is the Morgan and the Achilles.
So looking through the builds, something has caught my eye that stands out. You know, you were mentioning all the different items that can come through. So I was like, okay, well, where's that man right now? And he's got a Genji's Guard. And I actually wanted to ask you about this just because, you know, theoretically, hey, magical protections, I'm up against a Freya. They seem to go hand in hand pretty well, but it puts off that power spike, kind of like we were talking with the Aokwang earlier. Now it feels like it's maybe happening with the Ola run. Do you feel like having that cooldown is going to help, the passive play into him, or is this literally just a Freya don't kill me in a 1v1?
It's a little bit of both. I think that it is certainly a good defensive item up against the Freya, but I think the Genji's Guard is just a pretty cheap, good option. Ola Run doesn't often get any CDR, so getting a little bit in there, especially with the flat cooldown reduction that it gives you on the passive, feels really, really good on him. But the big deal is that Scream is playing Aokwang, and Zap knows that Scream's going to be hunting him in these late-game team fights, because that's the easiest kill for Scream on the enemy team. No CC immunity for Zap. Once you get the beads out from him, you pre-beads his knock-up, and you insta-kill him. It's a really easy cleanup kill for Scream, so now with Genjis, it makes it a little bit more difficult. I love the Genjis instead of something like Onis, because you're not going to get that same mitigation value, at least I hope you aren't, as a backliner, as a frontliner does, because that requires a whole lot of enemies to be near you. So I think the Genjis is the perfect pickup here for Zap.
Well, so far it's working out for him. Still seems to hit really hard and has a 2-level lead over Gaijay as of right now. So even though the kills maybe aren't coming up in Zap's way, everything else seems to be falling right in order for him. And it feels like eUnited, and again the ward coverage maybe comes into my mind when I see it, they just can't do anything over here right now on the left-hand side of the map. It's going to be spotted out by the Knights, or, well, the Knights have already been through and taken it. The red buff, as well as some of those Harpies in terms of experience, stripped away. With Gold Fury just about to respawn here in a couple of seconds, maybe opens up the avenue for eUnited to try and get back on top, but it's now 5k gold between the two teams. Knights seem perfectly fine letting it sit by the wayside, not fight for a little while, and just wait for this next objective-based team fight to break out.
I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be happy with that, because you just want to force eUnited into a 5-on-5 as soon as possible. You've got the level 20 advantage on 3 different characters on your team. You know Heroin gets way less value out of his ultimate in situations like this in comparison to the spread out laning.
Well, right now it's Gold Fury, about half health. Zapman looks to try and burn that one down. There's going to be the World Weaver onto Zap. Snoopy is the only one who can follow up on it, though, and that's going to be the Sanctified Fields looking to burn through. Forces Variety up onto the Somersault Cloud, forces Snoopy out. And he's used this ult more defensively than offensively this game. Now they're going to even shell just to try and stay alive there. The damage may be too great for them. No kills breaking out just yet, but Variety looking to be the first to fall as Paul chases him down there in mid. They get rid of the solo laner like it's nothing, and now it's the question of the follow-up. Good beads from Heroin stops him from getting knocked up and into the awaiting grasp of Neil. So eUnited, they disengage well, but they're going to lose a Gold Fury for it.
It just felt a little bit like a set play by eUnited that never really came together. I mean, the preemptive ultimate onto Zapman, and that's the right target because, like we highlighted, if he doesn't have beads, he's a free kill for Scream every time. So they try and get his beads, but with Variety so far away, with Snoopy so far away, it doesn't really put enough threat onto Zap to force him to use a relic. And Steve's a veteran, man. He's not just going to use the beads willy-nilly. If he's the worst player in the league to try and get him to waste beads because he doesn't want to do that ever in that situation. It just felt like a little bit of an ambitious call right there.
Well, this time the World Weaver goes on to Zap, but Neil ends up taking it. Scream trying to finally put his mark here, but Neil just screams, "No, you will not take my carry," and he's living through it as it is right now. The damage is starting to look too strong against Neil, but he manages to get out alive. Scream instead is the one that goes down. 60 seconds in the penalty box, and the Knights are still in a position to get aggressive here. Snoopy unable to do anything. The tower over here in the solo lane is gone. Fire Giant and Pyromancer ripe for the taking.
Yeah, 1 minute minor for Scream for ulting a CC immune target. Neil Ma had the perfect excavate in order to give himself the CC immunity so that he didn't get executed, and instead it was Scream who was going to get punished for trying to go in right there. Again, it just feels like eUnited is trying to set this up, and the execution is just a little bit weak. Unfortunate for sure that Neil just so happens to walk in front of that World Weaver, but that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes.
And it felt like such a long setup, too. You could see them dancing around in the jungle. It doesn't end up amounting to much here. Gaijay eviscerated before he could do anything. Sanctified Fields once again coming down. Snoopy is already pretty low, forced into the ult to retreat, but it's Heroin who gets burned down first. Cuvo Fred finds credit for that one. Scary D looking to clean up Snoopy in the back. Variety left here to do, well, anything and everything he can in his power. Unfortunately, it is just to Oxform on out of there. Wukong does one thing really well, and that's staying alive, so at least he's available for a potential Fire Giant steal, maybe to help Scream out, but not a lot of potential for eUnited to turn anything around, at least for another 20 seconds.
Just not been a clean game here from eUnited so far in this one. Gaijay either didn't hear the call from Variety that Morrigan was stealthed right next to him, or didn't respect the call from Variety, because Variety tries the Tiger Stun Paul out of stealth, and Paul just kind of slips right by him to continue the hockey analogies. He gives him the deke and heads straight towards Gaijay, who didn't have any purification beads up, so he's up a creek without a paddle in that situation. Morrigan at this point in the game just becomes really, really oppressive. She is very difficult to handle right now because ward coverage doesn't really do enough for you because her stealth is a long duration and she's really, really fast in it, so wards really don't help you that much unless you've got incredibly deep wards from where she's going to be stealthing from, not necessarily where she's going to, and not a single Aegis on the side of eUnited, which is kind of what you need against the Morrigan. The shell is good because it blocks her poly auto, but it's still not quite as good as Aegising her whole combo if you can react to that sound cue of the stun coming into you. So it's pretty free pickings right now for Paul.
Well, we're existing in an interesting world for eUnited. A couple of build, items that are either missing or that are there, but maybe a little too soon. My eyes drift to the Fail Knot, picked up pretty fast there for Hurricane. My brain just melted for the words. And, you know, Finch had mentioned it on the desk. We saw it earlier in the Challenger circuit. But no Hecate picked up so far for Scream. Maybe that denotes why we haven't seen him quite shredding anybody in the backline, is right now they're just trying to bounce people off of these Phoenixes.
It is sometimes mind-boggling when thinking about Scream's builds, but you know, that's just the Sprack brain expanding, and the rest of us are trying to catch up. Like I said earlier, maybe he really felt like he needed the physical protection to prevent himself from getting invaded or something, but Hecate's still real good. I would advise building it for sure.
Well, it's still going to be a lot of damage from an Alquang. It's one of the best things about him, but right now Snoopy forced into his ult once again, tries to turn it into something aggressive, but there's no follow-up, not enough from his team to make it matter. So that's going to be a long cooldown he's going to have to sit on with no success thwarting the Knights. In fact, they're just going to come right back into it. Zapman thinks he can take this no problem. If not, it's going to be Gaijay that they want to break down. Variety loses his life over in the mid lane. Hurricane and Scream forced to play cautiously. A lot of return damage from Hurricane there on Paul, but it's not going to be enough to break him down or stop the Knights. Again, the aggression keeps coming out. Cursed Ankh gonna be used to try and stop this healing, stop the sustain, and that's an execute finally coming down for Scream. The next target, he's gonna dive deep into the back line, but he's not gonna be able to follow anyone up. Scary D, Paul, all low, but he's not gonna be able to get the kill, and right now, they've spotted him out. In fact, Paul even wants to go in on this one. The stun's gonna be good, the kill's gonna be better, and they're gonna find a 2-for-1. And now with that Phoenix open, they can aggress into the Titan room. I don't know if they have what they need to end it, but they're going to be able to get a lot of aggression onto Snoopy. Hurricane's getting a good bounce back. With Gaijay here, feels like just enough damage to slow the Knights down.
Paul just caught the startup frames of Snoopy's dash, and that's going to do it for game number 1 with Sanctified Field in tow.
Absolutely.
PK going to pick this one up pre-30 minutes.
Oh, they're going to be fighting one last time. No one is going to be able to take anyone remaining down. Like you said, they take that one 29-29, very poetic of a number. And whether you want to highlight builds, when it comes down to plays, there were just certain combos that didn't happen there for eUnited consistently throughout that game that really made the difference. The Knights were able to react to them almost perfectly every single time.
Yeah, completely agreed. I just feel like the idea was there for the United composition, but it never really came together. I don't think we saw a single World Weaver actually connect on a side laner and result in a kill once the entire game. And if you're not getting that out of Neath, you're not getting anything out of Neath. I know she's better now than she was before, but if you're not getting ultimates in the laning phase that result in kills, that character is not worth picking. So it's time for United to look for something else in the mid lane for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be back to the drawing board for them. A lot of, in essence, theory things that should work that just didn't happen in execution. We'll have to see what they do in Game 2, but before that, the desk is going to help break down Game number 1.
Thanks, Gore and Aggro. We absolutely will break it down. A strong win for the Knights, particularly Paul in that middle lane playing well. But I don't know, Myth. I have this urge to talk about some of the things that eUnited didn't quite do well enough. I mean, again, I think we see Cthulhu underperform, Scream perhaps unwilling to go the more traditional Alquang build, struggling for damage throughout this game. This was a tough one for eUnited when I really thought they came in poised to play well.
I'm going to address a couple of those points, but you're not going to debate me into slandering Cthulhu support. I'm still an ardent defender, but I think you are right to highlight that Alquang build, questionable, man. I mean, if you're going to play a magical auto-attack jungler, why aren't you going to play with the best item in the game for that? He bought just about every ring except for Ring of Hecate. He bought Demonic Grip, he had Telkines, he went the Legion Helm first item. You might need that survivability, but as Alquang, your best case survivability is killing someone, going into the air, and then leaving. I think you were right, though, to highlight Paul, man. This guy was controlling the map from second one with these ultimate plays. A lot of his kills really just came from the Morrigan form, and he just killed literally everybody. This Freya didn't get a lot of value because she was dead before she even knew where Paul was.
Yeah, we really are starting to get to the point. Well, obviously, Paul had a tremendous impact, but in terms of team fight impact, Oleron is starting to seem pretty unmatched to me, man. Sanctified Field is oppressive as far as ultimates from a backline carry go. It's an absurd amount of control that he's able to implement with that ultimate, and he's not alone in that regard. Kivo Fred, as the original set, did a good job making sure Paul had a good transformation target. Scary D, 4-0-7 on the Achilles. This this was dominance really from the Knights as the game got later on. Things were close towards the beginning, but eventually PK took pretty strong control. And you and I talked about at the beginning of this, Myth. This is an important game for both of these teams because they're relatively close, I think, in terms of overall capability and the standings in every way you look at them. But in that game, Knights came out looking a lot better.
And I think it has to do with the fact that Knights came in with a strategy that felt Knights. When I look at that draft, I can see, yeah, that's something the Knights would draft. Look at eUnited, almost every single piece is brand new. The Hurrywin isn't playing as Yanis. I mean, Scream's playing something new as well. I think it really is eUnited lacking their identity, and it's coming back to bite them.
That's right. We talked about that at the beginning. What is their identity, right? Ghost, it's the early game. Sanguine, they want to team fight you late. I mean, we're getting to the point now where I think the best teams have figured out a way to play Smite that works for them and that other teams have a hard time beating. But I feel like every time eUnited come in, they're scratching and clawing just to get back to even, just to get to a normal spot, much less trying to develop their own offensive sort of identity. So they've got a lot to work on, despite the fact that obviously this is a squad with a ton of really talented pieces. They just haven't figured out how to make it mesh yet.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of running in my head right now trying to figure out who we haven't gassed yet on PK, and it is Neilma. I mean, that Hercules play was phenomenal. There were a couple times where Olarun Zapman was getting targeted out, and Neil, just behind the enemy team, pulls him off, says, hey, psych, maybe look at me. Sure, he traded out his life in exchange, but that's exactly what you need from a support, and that's what I'm talking about when I say that even when Neil is playing these more aggressive-minded supports like Hercules, he still really is only got the best intentions of his team in mind.
Well, I'm glad you bring up Neil and supports in general as we move into the picks and bans for game number 2. I think what we're starting to see now is that supports are really struggling, Myth. I thought from both Snoopy and from Neil Ma, we saw them struggling at the beginning of team fights, falling off quickly, dying right at the beginning. It is difficult right now, I think, to play the support role. A lot of other roles got a lot of big love in terms of things like Hakate, Atlanta's Bow and Fail Not, Sledge for some of these warriors, assassins, have Heartseeker and all these other great items that blow you up instantly, but it does feel like there are some struggles sometimes from that support spot.
Look, won't get any pity from me because they ain't me, bro. I don't care about a support. We're playing jungle. We're playing hunters. Aggro's a mid laner. I mean, Hindu can cry backstage all he wants, but I'm pretty happy with where we are right now. The people that aren't happy, likely eUnited, they're going to have to change up their strategy again, but that's what eUnited always does. Every single set, they come in with something new, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them completely switch up the strat here.
And they're going to need to. I mean, clearly, very little was working for them in that first game. We do see things looking fairly similar here. You got to ban Hell up against Paul because Paul has a unique god pool that he plays too well to allow it through, so you absolutely have to ban that. I'm wondering, Myth, are we going to see this Cthulhu run back? I mean, I think even separate from the Cthulhu support discussion, obviously he's strong in support and solo. I'm not sure that I've been particularly impressed by how Snoopy has played it or with how eUnited has played it around him. One of those parts of the equation doesn't seem to be there yet for me.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems like every time we see Snoopy really get off to a really good start in a team fight, his entire team was dead already. It come back to the mind the Gold-Free fight around the 11-minute mark. Cthulhu was the last one standing, and he did an immense amount of damage, about 5,000 split between everybody. But it didn't super matter. His entire team was dead, and the second he came out of that ultimate form, he really just died himself. I think it comes down to, even when they're playing around this Cthulhu, they're not using him to the best of their ability. The Cthulhu's almost always using that ultimate for self-peel, immediately begins to walk away, turns around, tries to work his way back in. I think it certainly has strength in that support role, but it hasn't really been put on display just yet. And if you want to play Cthulhu as that solo agent who's just looking to deal damage, I'm going to go ahead and side with you just this once. Don't get used to it. Might as well toss it into the solo lane.
Well, so far, none of the mage ADCs have been banned out that we saw last game that were really strong. Morgan and Hercules are still available as well that were very strong for the Knights in that last game. eUnited not really making much of an adjustment in the ban phase at the very least to try and stop what we saw that was so effective from them in game 1. Perhaps this first pick will shine a different light on it. I believe Freya was their first pick overall for Guy J in the long lane. He played, I think, relatively well on it. It just really never got a chance to do a whole lot for them. So I'm not sure if it's worth their first overall prioritization if it can't end up being more impactful because they're already behind.
Look, I love the Freya pick in general, but you were right. They do decide to go for the Hercules, which is a strong tool for controlling the lane. But now PK can likely take the Freya themselves, or they might even move towards the Oleron. We already saw the strength of Sanctified Field. They could even go in towards both. I mean, I wouldn't stop them from doing it. Those are both incredibly strong picks.
That's scary.
I'm
We hadn't seen
very
that yet.
concerned. Yeah, I don't want to see it either. Imagine Morgan with that, 2 Freyas and an Oleron run at you. No, not for me. But I'm concerned about where Hurrywind is going to go for this mid pick on eUnited. We saw now that he tried to flex a little bit his God pool, look towards the Neath. World Weaver got 0 credit at any point. It didn't really result in any kills. We didn't really see him trade out in the mid lane too often in a 1v1, which is where hunters in mid really do thrive. Instead, I think he might go back to the Yanis. But even then, what do you have to build a team around it? And if eUnited are going to go for this early aggression with Hercules and then try and match it with another early aggression jungle, Yanis isn't the type of god that you have for the damage. He's really just a mobile assassin.
Interesting to me that PK take the Freya first overall with Oleron also available. It can mean a couple things to me. One, that they just flat out value the Freya more and they'd rather have it than the Oleron. Second, maybe they thought because eUnited first picked Freya that they didn't hyper value the Oleron. Obviously, we see now that they will take it if that Oleron is available. But, Myth, I think this is an interesting question. I mean, if both are available, they do different things. Freya, certainly the best in raw DPS, but Oleron's teamfight presence is almost unmatched thanks to that ultimate.
Yeah, Oleron is so much better in the team fight. Freya, much better in 1v1, 1v2, or even 1v3 situations. Her damage and lifesteal potential is a lot higher. She has a lot more self-peel. But Oleron doesn't struggle nearly as much as Freya does when it comes to objective sieging. He's got a lot better tower damage. He's got a lot better space control. There are things that these gods do incredibly well, and some where they overlap, mainly just god damage. Freya might shine through a little bit further, but I think overall, I might value Oleron just a little bit higher because of how versatile he is in the teamfight phase.
But I like this drafting phase from eUnited. I mean, I liked their drafting phase from Game 1. The execution just wasn't there. They got the Hercules taken away from Neomah. They get the Uller, who is often considered at least a decent matchup into Freya. Not a hard counter by any means, but a strong matchup. And they have Oleron, who we've already covered as the superior mage ADC in teamfights. I think eUnited have set themselves into a nice position. Now, I think you might be a bit worried about another Morgan here for PK. I don't know if you have that same concern here, Myth, but we saw when that set for Cuvo Fred, it was more dangerous at times in the hands of Paul than Cuvo Fred.
I think Morgan could certainly come through here. It would be very good into Oleron. He's got a little bit of an easier time peeling for himself against the Morgan than Freya would. But as far as I'm concerned, this Oleron is almost guaranteed going towards the mid lane. Freya is almost guaranteed going into the duo. And as far as 1v1 potential in mid, Oleron is going to have a very easy time identifying whether or not the Morgan's going to be coming at him, as opposed to if he were in duo lane and the Morgan comes out of the jungle. So we might see Paul just go back towards a more standard pick, and PK's already got a pretty decent answer to the Oleron inside of Jingxian. We see that with Witchblade and Ferocious Roar and Nemean Lion. These mage auto attackers are really struggling against Jingxian.
He's been strong into the mage ADCs for sure. I believe we even saw an early Pestilence prioritize high magic protections and obviously the anti-heal passive strong into a lot of what mage ADCs want to do. So far though, PK only banning out junglers, no Thor, no Robin, and those are both plenty strong, but maybe a little too meta to be banning against Scream. Jokes aside though, obviously love those bans, and eUnited choosing to ban away the Neath and the Morgan. I think those are great bans here to try and limit some of what Paul wants to do. I mean, obviously, you could always default to something like a Merlin or a Raijin and still look strong, but so far, I think these are pretty good second-round bans.
Yeah, eUnited has dedicated 4 bans now to Paul. I mean, Neath, Morgan, Hebois, and the Hell. I mean, that's as much respect as one could garner at all. Yeah, you know, Hebois, it's what he says when I lock him in, man. Don't worry, I got him diamond. I know what I'm doing up here. Yeah, look, let's not get into the semantics of it. I am really excited to see where Scream decides to go with this pick. I think he might be able to bust out the Arachne just because it has a very strong matchup in a set. He can deal with the Freya a little bit better than the majority of the other auto attack assassins, and we know that Scream is highly capable on that pick. We haven't quite seen it just yet, which means I'm going out on a limb saying it, but maybe I can will it into existence myself. This Vamana pickup is very strong at Oleron. Sanctified Field ain't mean nothing to him.
No, they got the full-on anti-Olaron draft here, right? The Xingqian and the Vamana should both be very good at disregarding the Sanctified Field with those ultimates and their long-channeled CC immunities that they provide. So I like this. Obviously picking the Freya and leaving up the Olaron on purpose to allow for this sort of counter draft to come through later. Now to see how eUnited look to respond here, Myth. They pick up the Cerberus. This is something that we've seen Solo or Troll play over in the solo lane time and time again. How have you thought this Cerberus pick has looked when you've seen it?
Look, if you're picking Cerberus to directly counter Freya, it ain't working, man. I don't care how much lifesteal you're using or taking or whatever you gotta do. Freya with Ring of Akate and Typhon Fang is gonna be able to out-sustain it, out-DPS what you're doing, and likely not even take any damage in response. But what Cerberus does bring is a fantastic beads burning tool. He's got great chase down potential, decent survivability with the leap. He's an overall strong pick. I'm not sure that it's as good in a Freya as some people are making out, but it is certainly strong in its own right.
At the very least, a strong pick. They're going to pair that with the Naja. Appears to be going into the jungle, one would assume at this point. And Naja has great potential to take one person out of a fight. And when you're up against a team with Freya on it, in the back of your mind, all you're really thinking is, can we just get rid of this Freya? Maybe Naja for Scream is up to the task.
It is going to be very good into Freya, but you have to burn the beads first. But eUnited has already drafted around that. They have 1, 2, 3 beads burners, Hercules, Cerberus, Uller. They should be able to set up for the Naja very well. And even if Naja is the one burning beads in the early game, Ull will still have a decent matchup into Freya. Might even be able to 1v1 her with just that Axe Stun, Hail of Arrows, Bladed Arrow combo. But even then, PK's got so many threats on their team. This Set being a flex pick, Pele coming through. Couldn't predict where these gods are going to go. Things are looking very strong for them.
Yeah, this Set certainly seems like it can go anywhere. I mean, especially when you pair and they've got the Vamana as well. I mean, someone's got to go into the middle lane. Perhaps we have seen Set ADC in the past, but do you really want to put Freya mid? A lot of options, I think, with this Pittsburgh Knight draft, and I think they're hoping they're keeping eUnited guessing as well.
Which is the opposite of the strategy that you'd expect when eUnited's in the game. Their draft is a lot more predictable than PK's. Wouldn't have thought I would have said that beforehand. I think we will likely see the Pele in the jungle. I think we might see that Set in mid. Look, man, I shouldn't have even tried to guess. That's on me. All I know is that Xingqian's probably going to go into support.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, who knows, man? You weren't ready for Xingqian mid to pop out here from PK. It's a dangerous game trying to predict exactly where they're going to go. But you've got both these drafts in front of you, Myth. Are you leaning just towards Knights because they got Freya, or maybe you want to give eUnited this and we got a game 3?
I think it really would be leaning towards eUnited just because I can tell what their strategy is going to be come team fight phase. They're going to have the Hercules for setup, Olaron for that team fight sanctified field. Ull has fantastic long-range pokes, Cerberus is going to be burning beads, and Naja is going to be on Freya duty late game, whereas PK's draft is a little bit less cohesive. The Set's going to be trying to dive the back line, but even into Olaron, it's going to be very hard to lock him down. Freya is going to be dealing damage to whoever's in front of her. Xingqian's likely going to be trying to burn beads. Vamana's going to be on Olaron duty. And this Pele is also going to be on Olaron duty. With so many people looking for this backline dive, who's really going to be peeling for the Freya?
Yeah, they could run into that problem. And remember, eUnited have drafted, I think, to put the beads of this Freya in particular in a tough situation, right? Are you going to be using it for Cerberus ult? Are you going to be using it for Uller Axe, for Olaron Sanctified Field? Or what about if you get pulled in by this Hercules or sashed by the Naja? There's a lot of times, I think, when if you're someone who's super reliant on your beads, you could be in trouble this game. And on that same note, eUnited have some gods who can establish some pressure early. Hercules, Uller, even Naja. They have tons of potential to run over you, even pre-level 5.
They do. The only concern is how well is this Olaron going to be able to make it out of the mid lane? We can't even confirm whether or not the Olaron will be going mid. It could very well go into the long lane and have Uller in mid for that global pressure through the center of the map. But I do think I am leaning towards Olaron mid here, and dealing with him in mid with a Set on your team, with Pele, with Vamana, he might not be able to make it to that team fight phase because PK have that early game dive pressure.
And we talked about how PK have drafted all this long-channeled crowd control immunity to try and play into this Olaron, right? The Xingqian, Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, the Vamana into the Colossal Fury. But is that enough? I mean, Set, Freya, Pele, those gods are all still going to be struggling to try and fight into this sanctified field. How much pressure is on to Xingqian and Vamana to make sure they are hyper-focusing on this Olaron during these fights?
They have to be doing it, because if Oleron's allowed to roam free, while the rest of eUnited is going to be diving Freya, PK is going to be diving onto the Oleron. I mean, Oleron's got way better self-peel tools. I mean, sure, Valkyrie's Discretion might be good, but without the backline peel, this Freya is going to be under a lot of threat.
We're going to have to find out which one of these magical ADCs will reign supreme. Let's move on to game number 2.
Thank you once again, Finch and Mifflin on the desk. Again, myself, Gormizer, and Aggro going to be running the show for this one. And this is, well, the reveal I was waiting to see as it came through. Paul is going to be running that set. Now, that is something that is, I think, maybe a little unorthodox overall. Tell me, how exactly does this assassin make it work over there in mid?
It's not easy, I can tell you that much. I think it really comes down to the fact that Oleron as a god is going to put so little pressure on you in the mid lane that you can get away with something like this. You can get away with being a low clear sort of assassin in mid that also lets you be opportunistic in this lane. It's exactly what we saw Paul transform into basically every time. I don't think we saw him transform into Cthulhu once in game number 1, which is very surprising. I thought that was the main reason for the Morrigan pick, but I think Paul might just like playing set Gormizer. That's what it looks like to me.
He's just been crashing into his ranked games, and he's like, you know what? We could play this in SPL. Like, just let me play him mid. It'll work out fine. Well, right now, it's working out fine for him over there. Not working out quite so fine here for Zap. Not a kill in the duo lane, but a lot of damage from Snoopy, who's now on this Hercules. And it's realistically, the difference. eUnited kind of, in my eyes, have to prove that things are different from the beginning of Phase 1 when they were playing with Ionic and they were having some trouble with their Guardian play. I think now, that support, like Snoopy, needs to be able to shine maybe brighter than ever this game because he's not on that Cthulhu. He's on something that we're seeing run the show. I think this is the game for him to step ahead.
Agreed. I think that really eUnited as a whole need to step up a little bit more than what they have been. But I think this is the right plan, though. What a whoop from Zapman. Mid-driving strike. He caught Snoopy. That's just mechanics, ladies and gentlemen. Don't get it twisted. That was nuts.
And you saw, like, screams in the jungle. They thought for sure that Zap was about to be locked down. That was going to be a kill. And that's something you get, maybe when you play the game for, 7 years competitively, if not longer at this point since we're in 2020 for Zapman, you start to get those reflexes down. And he's been around for pretty much every single time Freya has been in the meta over in this duo lane. So I expect to see a lot more like that as the game goes on here. And you can already tell that they're playing it safe. They recognize, you know what, hey, it's Hercules Uller. We're not going to dominate this lane pretty much at any point until you can finish off a couple items, Zap. So we're just going to play it safe, slow it down, and sit under tower until we need to.
100%. And you're giving up purples. You're not trying to contest a whole lot, though. Check it out. Neil hasn't used his Hand of the Gods that he bought early. Now, this is securable by eUnited, even if they check that Hand of the Gods, if Snoopy can driving strike Neil before he secures, but looks like they might not have checked the consumable slot because that's a pretty easy pickup, and now Fred is coming. Snoopy's dead.
Once again, a good whoop sets it up, and like you said, Cuvo going to be able to help burn through that one. That's just good play from them, from securing their own purple buff to then burning down Snoopy. And again, it feels like the third, fourth, fifth time I've gotten to say it in the last 2 games, but kind of punished for his aggression more than rewarded for it, like we've seen out of people like PDM.
Yeah, I think that a big reason for that is the way that eUnited has played the map. For Ghost, it's a lot of little things like Sam hovering left side jungle or Twig stepping up in lane to force some rotation pressure from jungle. And that's what buys guys like PBM a lot of space and time that you might not see always from the spectator point of view. But that's what really happens more often than not.
Well, soloed. Variety is going to be able to get a lot, but right now it's up into the skies for Paul. Manages to teleport himself on out of there. Both Naja and the Sanctified Field's going to get dropped there, and now it's going to be Gaijay once again in trouble. Cuvo able to burn through that one with some lightning strikes, and now Snoopy in danger one more time. Good body blocks coming through from the Knights, and they are A-OK to dive this tower. and they quickly escalate that one all the way up to 3 clean kills for the team. A little bit of pressure over here. And yeah, it starts off with a solo kill for Variety, but I feel like that's a clean turnaround for the Knights.
Absolutely. You get the numbers advantage on the left-hand side, and you get an easy gank going for Fred, who's nice and patient with that Volcanic Lightning. And just an odd decision by Snoopy to try and to use some auto attacks there. I think Snoopy could have lived if he hadn't autoed Fred after he driving striked him, and then try to hit the turnaround 2 that, again, doesn't really kill Fred in that position. Just kind of an odd decision there from Snoopy. Still learning the limits, it feels like, of support.
And just trying to figure out, yeah, how aggressive you can be before you get punished for it. And even now, he's taking aggressive positioning once again, this time against Paul. Good blink, driving strike, going to be able to connect. But this set, it just brings something different than you're going to see out of a lot of mages, and that's that ability to just get out of jail free for a lot of this. You throw up a clone, you teleport on out of there, and it doesn't seem like eUnited have a secondary plan to lock him down.
It's a good point. I think that kills almost every other mid laner in the game without them having beads. Not set. He's got more mobility than the average mid laner.
Well, now it's Neil who's been stunned out. Damage is good, but 1 leap gets him away. 2 leaps makes sure the damage, or at least the gap, is a little further apart. Now you've got the rotation coming in. He's still pretty low here for Neil, but it's going to be Gaijay that gets turned on. Whirlwind as a secondary kill here for Cuvo Fred. Now Snoopy just trying to stay alive. Once again, your aggression gets punished, and it's nothing he can do about it. The team taken down. All 4 members, save for Variety, eliminated systematically here as the Knights turn this lead into a 7-1 kill advantage.
All right, tell me if this sounds familiar, Gormizer. I know you don't play a whole lot of solo lane, but you can just humor me for a minute here. Yeah. You're picking Cerberus, you know, you're going to have some fun god to play over there in the solo lane. You get a solo kill. You're feeling really good about where you are in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And then you press tab and you go, wait, what is our duo lane doing right now? How is the Uber down 2 levels to the Freya? How does she have 6 kill participations 6 minutes into the game? What is going on? Poor Variety over there is just kind of watching he's watching the city fall from the suburbs, it feels like, because everywhere else on the map is just crumbling for eUnited. And when you're losing this duo lane matchup, when you're losing Uller Hercules, that's a problem. I mean, that's not a one of those that you can really just shrug off. I think that is a serious concern right now for eUnited. I think that obviously that side of the map is going to need time to adjust and get used to the SPL level for Snoopy in the role and for Gaijay in general. But this looks like a bit of a regression from what we saw the last week.
Well, they're trying to take it back where they can. You had highlighted solo lane being important here. Now they're trying to get rid of Scary D, but the healing's too much and it overcomes Scream like it's nothing. A good gank from Cuvo makes his way out of the jungle and just nips that one in the bud before anything can start up. And, you know, I think it is this unfortunate scenario. Now you're trying to pick it up and, you know, you get that solo kill like you had highlighted and you're feeling great in solo lane, but 0-2 for the jungler, 0-3 and 0-2 there for your duo lane. Nobody is really able to pick it up, and unfortunately for Cerberus, at least from my experience playing a lot of Guardians, you're not really going to be the guy to turn it around on your own. Now the Knights are forced to showcase that maybe even more here. Sanctified Fields comes out to try and save Snoopy's life, maybe to try and find Cuvo Fred. The boulder comes down. Wow. Neil's a little bit low, but everyone from the Knights is going to be able to walk out alive. Snoopy is able to walk out alive, at least for now, but they're still fishing if you're the Knights, looking for something deep in this jungle. Finally seems like they call the retreat. You get a full-on rotation from Variety as well. The teleport's down for him. It seems like an almost overcommit from eUnited just to stay alive.
Look, in this situation, Gore, you are happy to get your buff and survive. Snoopy living at a sliver of HP is a godsend, it feels like, for eUnited at this point. We're taking small wins in these parts these days.
All right, now, one small win could be getting rid of Paul. Still has that nice teleport that gets him out of there. Immediately felt myself wanting to ramp up, like, oh man, they can finally do it. He's almost out of mana. It's still, set. He's still teleporting out of here. Yep. But Neil doesn't have the same advantage. Instead, he has a different version. It's 2 jumps that get him out just fine. The Gold Fury gets taken. Yeah, you pull him back into it, but Whirlwind of Rage and Steel maybe not be available, but he's in a good position to turn this around in your favor. Scary T rotates in. Whirlwind, unfortunately, has no mana, has a tower, so they stay alive. You finally get the support, but you trade all of that for the Gold Fury. And I just don't know if it's worthwhile for eUnited.
Look, again, Gore, we're taking small wins where we get them.
Small wins.
Yeah, small wins. Baby steps, it feels like, in this game. Because this has been as bad of a start as you could basically have in an SPL game. Sure, you've got one side of the map that's doing pretty well, but your jungler is infinitesimally behind. I mean, it's just it's huge the amount of difference between what Scream's able to do right now and what Cuvo is able to do right now. You look at Whirlwind very far down in the mid lane. Your Ullr is down by a bunch. I mean, all of your win conditions are just really struggling for eUnited. And in Variety, this is not going to be a win condition for you. He's just not on that right side of the map. He's playing a Guardian over there. It's gonna take time for him to ramp up, and even when he does, it's really just as a frontliner more than anything else. So it's not like he's gonna be the one to carry the game for you.
It doesn't seem like Scream is going to be either. 0-3 now as the Knights just collapse in on him. It was pretty much sacrificial lamb. Who's going to go down? GuyJ jumps over the wall to get out of there, and it keeps him alive. Unfortunately, for the rest of eUnited, they don't quite have the same ease of access to disengage from the Knights here. And the Knights don't care about a Pyromancer right now, Fire Giant. I mean, you're 11 minutes in. This has been all aggression for the Knights. It's way too early to try and turn your eyes towards something like that. And so because of that, there's only one place to glance right now. It's in duo lane, whether it's going to be GuyJ that goes down or the tower Zap is going to be happy with, but that's the teleport coming through once again from Variety. Blink forward, stun connects onto Zapman, and this would be a big kill for them to try and turn it around. GuyJ going to be able to connect that last auto, and now Cuvo in an unfortunate position, spotted out by Snoopy, going to get locked down against the wall. Whirlwind is here as well, and that's going to be a good knockback to make sure he stays engaged. Cuvo Fred goes down. eUnited find the small picks they need to, and as long as we're counting small victories, I'd say those are 2, well, big small victories for them in the grand scheme of the game.
Completely agree with you. That gets you at least some sort of confidence and some sort of momentum. I mean, PK doesn't waste any time. They grab themselves a Pyromancer while all that's happening, but it's something for eUnited, and that's all you can really ask for at this point.
All right, now something for eUnited translates into, it feels like a lot for the Knights, but maybe he bites off more than he can chew. Neil goes deep for Scream, but no one is there to follow up in terms of damage. No mana for Paul. And it feels like these small little victories are actually going to amount to something as they keep happening. The Knights almost losing their grip on this game. I mean, what was starting to look like a 3K lead that would just grow inevitably larger is now getting brought back. It's still getting close to that 3,000 mark, but you take a tier 1 here, a couple of towers there, eUnited can still fight their way back into this.
Somehow, PK has kind of gifted them some opportunities, at least there in the mid lane for Neil, but that should have probably been a trade-out kill for Scream. Paul a little bit too scared to get in there with how low his HP bar was, and I think you have to give eUnited, at least some members of eUnited, credit. Variety has hit everything this game, has really been on point with this Cerberus. Snoopy, despite some pretty bad positioning mistakes, has also hit everything, it's felt like, this game. So the glimpses are there for eUnited, and it's not as bad as I thought it would be at 13 minutes now. I mean, GuyJ's only down about a level, and that's a win, I suppose, even the Ullr versus Freya matchup. Scream only down about a level. Same for Hurry. Snoopy, I think, is a little bit ahead of Neil, actually, now after Neil's last death. So, all things considered, look, I was about to say that it was looking like, as you would know, Gore, Dolson was about to put his Chipotle order in. You know, that's when we know the end of the day is coming. That it was looking like the Chipotle order needed to go in pretty quickly on this final game, but all of a sudden, eUnited is competitive.
Now they're looking to continue locking down at least Paul. The one thing the desk highlighted was the CC, and you can see the chain right there. The boulder comes through as well, and they're looking to lock down this set no problem. Almost turns it around on the Scream, and now Cuvo at 5-1 is going to turn that into a 6-1 as he dives deep into the backline for Scream. Now trying to chase down what Scary D is assisting. The damage onto Heroin. 2 big carries for eUnited taken down. Unfortunately for Snoopy, it looks like he might be the next one to fall. A double kill for the solo laner here for the Knights. Variety doing what Variety so far has done best, is get in, be effective, and then get out before anything can go wrong.
Blame the teammates, right? Make sure their KDs don't look quite as good as yours. Again, Variety has the right idea, goes in, knows Paul's beads are down, but Scream is just so far behind, he's not dealing enough. The fact that eUnited don't have any anti-heal right now is a little bit mind-boggling to me. I mean, you look at how good anti-heal is in this match. It's fantastic against Scary D, Cuvo, Paul, Zapman, and we've got a grand total of 0 anti-heal so far for United. And I know it's early in their builds, I know they're behind, but man, do they need it. I mean, that Crusher can be a Brawler's beat stick for Scream. That doesn't need to be a Crusher in that slot. Naja's not the best anti-heal applier in the whole world, but he's not bad. He's certainly worth picking it up when there's this much healing on the enemy team. Hurry not going for a Toxic Blade like I thought he might pretty early on in this game, probably because he's so far behind he feels like he needs the damage of a Typhons. He's right, but can you ever compete with PK's draft if you don't have anti-heal? Snoopy, I'm praying, is going to get an Onk at level 12 because Variety didn't. I was honestly thinking that this could be a double Onk scenario with how good anti-heal is against PK. It looks like Variety might just be throwing his hands up and saying, I'll pick up a Divine, because I know that Heroin can't really do it on this Ola run very effectively. But eUnited is certainly lacking anti-heal at this point in their builds.
And then you start to question the diversification, right? I mean, if you have Scream, Heroin, like you highlighted, picking up their items for anti-heal, then you've got 3 applicators. Because Variety, it might be small in Cerberus, but there's still some in the passive. If he gets a Divine, though, kind of feels like it's all stacked on one guy. If Variety has one bad engagement, it could all slip out away from them. So my eyes are anxiously awaiting what Snoopy picks up for that second relic, especially considering it's taken a little while to get to level 12, considering he had a small lead over Neil earlier.
Look, I mean, if Snoopy doesn't get on once he hits 12, then you're solo casting the rest of the day, Gore, because I'm losing my board. I got to go find it at that point, because I think it'll be tough. I mean, look at the way that Scary's able to itemize. He goes Hasten because why not? He's level 18. Look at Heroin. He's level 13. Do you think that he's even a little bit scared of what that damage dealer is going to do to him? Look at where Guy J is in his build. He's got Atalanta's bow. Who cares? It's just not enough.
Not enough, and they're showcasing that in their play. Pyromancer started up, buffs being taken away. All of eUnited kind of almost timidly feels in their play right now, hanging around just around their speed buff, around their jungle shrine to stay alive. They are confirming some of their buffs. They're losing a lot of other engagements in the process. And now Scream is looking to get chased down. Scary D wants blood. But unfortunately, this Naja feels a little too safe. Blink for Blink is going to be met there. And now Zap's over here. Unfortunately, the Whoop just a second too late, but you trade a Whoop for Scream's ult. I think you're pretty happy about that one.
Honestly, Gore, at this point, the Whoop might be more valuable. I don't know. That might be a good trade.
Well, now they're trying to figure out whether or not this will be a good trade. Cuvo looked to be by himself, but now he's looking to melt through Snoopy's health bar. Guy J going to be isolated. Beads going to be used. The shell going to be used as well, but it's just not enough to keep him alive long enough. Heroin, the next target, and that's going to be the ult. They were talking about it on the desk, and now you can see it in action. Run straight through the Sanctified Fields like it's nothing. Collapsing on Snoopy. Variety doing his best and anything possible in his power to delay this. All the while, Scream decides to start split pushing over there on left side. Looks like a tier 2 for a tier 2, and now maybe a Phoenix race, depending on what Knights want to do with it. Zapman still wants to be aggressive over here. Variety doing a great distraction job, but they might be turning around, and it looks like it's a Fire Giant.
Why not at this point? I mean, Scream's level 15, but doesn't have his ultimate available. Variety does have TP and could get here and get involved potentially, but it looks like he's just hoofing it over towards this side of the map. It is worth noting that PK's objective damage, especially on towers, is pretty low. with this composition, but turns out having a like an 8K lead at 18 minutes will wipe away any weaknesses your composition has at all, because you get to do whatever you want, whenever you want.
You talk about the CC that you could suffer from, how much they can stack it up on eUnited, but when you have this much of a gold lead, not only do you not care about it, but all the engagements are already going your way. You're finding these individual picks. Unfortunately for Snoopy, that 0-3 now has turned to 1-5, so he's turned at least a little bit around in the time that it's changed, but not enough. And I think you're really seeing a big difference from him, or unfortunately here for Scream in the jungle. As Zapman, we still haven't seen, this feels weird to say, she's 3-1-5, and I almost said we haven't seen a whole lot out of this Freya. Not a whole lot in terms of just solo kills and raw 1v2 potential. But as of right now, it's Zap and Neil versus 4 members of eUnited, and guess who's running away? It's eUnited. As Scary D looks to get aggressive, Whirlwind is just erased from the map, and now Scary D trying to chase down anyone that's left. Variety trying to hold on to it, uses his ult to keep everyone going, but Scary D is going to get the kill there, dashes forward, Guy J goes down, Hurwin's taken out, Scream, the last one standing, but not for long. There's still too many towers for them here, so the Knights are going to have to back off, but this is a sufficient lead, and 20 seconds without anyone to worry about on eUnited.
That might be game. The fact that Hurwin died without being able to do anything at all is actually a boon for United in this moment, because again, the little bit of lower tower damage for PK means it'll take them a little bit longer on this Phoenix, and by the time Hurlwind is up, he'll have relics and that sanctified field available to go.
Well, now we're going to enter that question mark. You had said might be game, and this is where it really does come down to it. Olarun about to be respawning with sanctified fields online, a couple of teammates right behind him. It's one of those jobs where it's going to be dirty. All you have to do is get in there and delay. It doesn't matter if it costs you your life. You just need to keep the Titan alive long enough. And it looks like it's going to be, sufficient overall for them as far as respawns go. We go a little forward into it, and the Knights do seem to have had to back off here. As the Phoenix was taken and left, the Titan still stands.
Look, it might not be over literally, but we are definitely putting the order in right now, Gore. You know, we have gotten back to the point.
We've opened the web page.
Exactly. Yeah. We're opening up the app. We're scrolling. You know, we getting bowl today. We going burrito. Like, we got options, but eUnited is pretty low on options right now. This is the 99.9% sort of games now for PK. They need to make mistake after mistake after mistake in order to let eUnited back into this one.
And in a very similar fashion, bowl or burrito, it's kind of end now, end in a little bit, right? How much longer is it going to take to make one versus the other? But we always know the Knights, they're, at least at this point, pretty iron grip on it, just like you can have a sure bet that Dave is going to go bowl over burrito every single time he orders Chipotle. So it's one of those guarantees. And it's just growing. I mean, I'm looking down at the gold numbers that we just had there. It's almost 20,000 in their favor. That's still with a tier 2 standing up. Fire Giant maybe being the one thing that's going to keep this game kind of prolonged more than anything is the fact that, they only have a minute and a half with it. You have to get a pretty solid team fight here to get something turned around in your favor, and almost looks like they're going to start it off that way. Snoopy taking a lot of damage, forced to disengage almost immediately, and it just showcases, I think, what the Knights are doing, which is they don't care anymore. They know they can win this fight. They know they can win it 10 times out of 10, so they're going to keep on taking it.
Yeah, unfortunately having a little bit of trouble, so sorry everybody about that. We're obviously working on it. But right now, I mean, I want to zoom out a little bit because, as we've said, this game is in a pretty precarious position now for eUnited. Last week, my big takeaway that I talked about actually at the very beginning of SPL Waiting Room was that no matter how long it takes Snoopy and Gaijay to get adjusted to the SPL level for their roles, if Scream and Variety can play the way that they did last week, that eUnited is going to have a shot game in and game out no matter what. And it has been the exact opposite of that here today. Variety has continued to look very strong, but Scream really has struggled today. So I don't know if it's back to G Fuel and the coffee or whatever the game plan is, but we got to get something rolling for the kid because he has not looked good today.
Well, it is going to be the big question. Unfortunately for them, they lose another Fury. They managed to prolong enough of this Fire Giant, still hanging around on 4 members of the Knights for about a minute. as they're just trying to bounce this back. And, you know, you had mentioned the level 20 advantage in Game 1. Now you look at it as being even more prominent. I mean, it's 4 levels there in mid. And just to prove a point, thank you, Paul, more than anything. Kills off Heroin like it's nothing. Now they're looking to get aggressive onto Variety and onto Snoopy. They've got minions there on the tower as well, so it's all aggression. But they're going to go ahead and pull back off this one because they know where the true target they want is, and that's Gaijay here in the jungle. Once again, Paul proving these assassins can work in his hands. Maybe he wants to be a jungler at heart, but a mid laner through and through, making sure this set works. Now with a Phoenix going down, 2 members down, with Heroin about to respawn, it's definitely going to make it hard for the Knights to end here aggro, but do they have the potential to?
I think so. I mean, I don't know, maybe not. Heroin's up in 7 again with that Sanctified Field, and that's a pretty big deterrent. So I think that it might be PK backing up and just heading towards that Fire Giant. You might as well snag it up because, again, their objective damage really isn't great unless they've wiped you. They've wiped eUnited a lot so far this game, so that hasn't shown its face yet. But I do think that they can struggle in these objective fights otherwise. So this is probably the wiser call.
Well, the question is, are eUnited holding on by a thread? Well, they are holding on by a thread. That part is not necessarily a question. They absolutely are. It's whether or not their grip strength is going to be good enough to do anything by holding on to this thread, or if it's just going to be the Knights slowly squeezing out the rest of the life eUnited have for this set. I mean, it's 22-7. They have more than 3 times the amount of kills eUnited have been able to pick up. A lot of them being able to get split between the jungler and, you know, surprisingly enough, your mid laner and your solo laner are the next 2 highest up. The Freya, I mean, Zap's just kind of participating. He's getting some of the damage down and then letting everyone else do the dirty work. And now with the zoning that's going on, it's whether or not they can make something happen. And right now, it's Variety and Scream. You had highlighted them. They're looking to try and split push a Phoenix.
They're going to get it. I don't think that PK really gave Scream's build enough credit. It's a lot of attack speed with those ninja towers.
Well, unfortunately, it's what can you do afterward. You get the Phoenix, you go up into the skies here to try and break down Paul, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Variety looking to get soloed off in the jungle. 1 more hit is all Cuvo needs, and that's going to be 2 clean kills for that Phoenix. Maybe a trade worthwhile for the Knights. Fire minions now spawning on eUnited, though, is going to allow that Phoenix to respawn and help protect their left lane. But it's up to this Fire Giant. No one on eUnited in anywhere near the position to try and defend it. Zapman seems to scoff at the Fire Giant's damage here 24 minutes in as well. This looks like a free objective, and it's leading up to what should be the culmination. It just depends on if the Knights keep playing the way they do.
They've been able to keep it pretty clean so far. I mean, Cuvo did use both his relics and his ult, so now he has no CC immunity. Maybe they can, eUnited can find a little bit of a Herc combo or something like that. It makes Cuvo far worse at diving Heroin, who has a lot of great self-peel now between Sanctified Field and Consecration, so that's at least something that eUnited might be able to work with.
Well, Right Phoenix is in trouble this time around. Zapman trying to break it down. I think you're starting to see the reason you tend to want someone physical there. It just helps with some of these objective sieges in terms of Phoenix's towers and whatnot. But Zapman doesn't care because he can just kill you outright in the event things are troublesome. Or you just send Scary D to a different lane and he takes a Phoenix all by himself anyway. Now you can get aggressive. Scream goes up into the air with him, but the healing is still going to be there for Scary D. And he keeps getting aggressive, falls back a little bit to try and top himself off. And Cuvo loses his life because of it. The aggression from the Knights still existent, but a good sash holds Zapman back a little bit, trying his best to do whatever he can as Freya up into the skies and down into the grave goes Scream. Zapman's pretty low though, and good knockback from Hercules is going to help confirm that one, but Snoopy trades out his life for it. 2 members left standing here for eUnited. The Titan has fire minions on it though, and Pittsburgh Knights are going to turn their attention more towards the Titan. They're low. Scary D, Neil 1 hit away from death. Paul coming into the back to clean up Heroin like it's nothing, trying to burn down the Titan. 1 more hit is all it needs. Scary D goes down, but so does the Titan. Knights take it in 2.
Yeah, that a little bit of fun there, I think, at the end, trying to make sure they get those kills. But ultimately, PK clean up what looked to be a very, very easy 2-0 for them. eUnited looking a little bit lost, and again, I think it really does come down to how that early game went. When you have the Hercules Uller lane, and you fall that far behind pre-level 5, the game is effectively over. You just cannot win. When you've drafted to win that lane and then are unable to do so, it's just not going to work for you.
In the draft, both of them looked pretty good there for eUnited. Still question marks around that support for Cthulhu, but everything else seemed to fall in line. It was, like you said, kind of the execution that just didn't quite meet the threshold. Knights come out on top, but Desk, tell us what else happened in Game 2.
Thanks, Gore. And aggro, at the beginning of this, I said that the Knights and eUnited were really close in how strong they are, but the Knights proved that I was way off base there, at least for now, as the Knights dominate in a 2-0 win over eUnited. And Myth, I guess you can kind of throw a dart at a dartboard here as long as the PK names are on it to pick who might have been the real standout star here. Was it Paul? Was it Cuvo Fred? Was it Zapman on the Freya? I mean, they kind of had their way with this one, and Snoopy really struggled this set, at least from what I was seeing.
Yeah, Snoopy never got his feet under him, but you know what? I will go ahead and name him MVP. Overall for the set, we'll give it to Paul. Game 2 it was Cuvo. Game 1 it was Paul. I mean, look, man, you can get 7 kill participation in 5 minutes on a jungler. You're never not going to get gas from Mifflin, all right? Cuvo absolutely dominated this game, and he put his Freya in a position to just absolutely dominate the game and the lane. PK just looked way more cohesive. It seemed like they came in with strategies, and I can't really say the same for eUnited.
You know, they really struggled, and I think the thing that really hurt them in this game was that they so clearly drafted to get off the ground quickly with this early game. Hercules Uller is a dual lane that should lose to next to no one, man. That is just a ton of pressure that you could start this game off with, and they weren't able to convert it. And then you start talking about how Herwin really struggled in the middle lane. Remember, they had a couple of gank attempts on Paul set in the middle lane, Myth, and none of those worked either.
They didn't. That's what you draft the set for, right? You want to have unbridled pressure and also a pretty good amount of survivability. That set leap is so hard to track. You really can't tell where he's going half the time because it's essentially just a blink. Throw it over a wall. Where'd he go? I'm not really sure. I really like the pick for the PK. Paul pulling out the set kind of tells me that, all right, he's feeling pretty comfortable after game 1. It was a pretty dominating performance. Let me see if I can flex my muscles, do something a little bit unorthodox. And he did, and he went 9-1-6. So power to him. Do it again, I guess.
I'm sure that he will. I mean, this PK Knights team is looking really strong right now, and we know that they're still a little bit on the outside looking in at those very top upper echelon teams, but the Knights are right there behind them, and they're improving every time we see them. And then on eUnited, I think we've already kind of assessed a problem here, way easier to fix than just speak about, right? But this team is struggling in terms of determining what their identity is, of what their win condition is right now, and it's going to be some work for them to sort of get that all solidified. But on the lighter side of things, with PK feeling great after their dub, we've got Zapman standing by for the interview.
That's right, I'm sitting here with the carry for the Knights. Zap, you know, you've been around long enough that I can ask you this. You've seen magical carries come into the fray, out of the fray, and now back into it. How you feel about, you know, Freya and Oleron being back in the game?
I don't mind it too much. I mean, we go through iterations where they are meta, and when they are meta, they're always better than hunters because the way they scale and the way they trade compared to hunters do. So in time, we'll probably see more nerfs, and then hunters will come back, and then people will be like, "Oh, I want to see magical ADCs again," and they'll get buffed and always play it. So you know, it's just a never-ending cycle, pretty much. But I don't mind either way.
Yeah, you make them look good no matter which one you take over there. And, you know, there's a lot to pick apart throughout this set. I think I'm going to focus on some of the more normal stuff first, which was, you know, Hercules for Neil the first time around, alongside you, that aggression. It felt like you guys knew what you were doing from minute 1 and were able to punish eUnited. How was that playing out in game?
Yeah, I mean, we had a game plan going in. We knew Oleron, Hercules can have some good synergy with their lane clear. I get my 2, because if I get my 1, it can get blocked by their support. So I get my 2, the Herc pulls the archers into the melee, and we insta-clear the wave, right? So we keep the pressure on Freya, and we try to out-farm them, and then out-team fight them with the Oleron ult compared to the Freya ult.
So in game 1, Paul picks Morgan and keeps turning into Set, and we're kind of laughing at it like, okay, maybe you don't want to turn into to Snoopy, the Cthulhu, because he's so far behind. But then in game 2, he just straight up played Set in mid. So I just want to know what was going through the team's mind to lock that in and let him play that in such an unorthodox role.
For sure, it's definitely a little bit unorthodox, but honestly, it's the beginning of a long season. We play each team 3 times. It's a long road till Worlds. You want to be like, you could just play meta stuff and give yourself the best chance to win, but in the long run, I think that's kind of a detriment to your team. I feel like you want to be able to try new things. Also, it has to make sense. You don't want to just throw the game, right? But it's something that Paul's been wanting to play, and we felt confident after game 1, so we said go for it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it looked good as well, so I don't think you're going to be able to shut him down if he wants to bring that set back. Either way, it was a very clean set from you guys. Congratulations once again on your win. Thanks for your time, but we're going to throw it back to the desk to close out the day.
Thank you very much.
I always call PK patient, but maybe I'm shortchanging them. Really, they have a holistic view listening to Zapman. They're looking at the phase as a whole and how being more versatile in their picks could help them out further down the line. Always good to hear from Zapman Mifflin. We're close to closing out the day here as PK just got through finding yet another win. And I think what we're really starting to see as we get closer to the end of week 2 here is that if you don't come in with a firm grasp on the meta as it is now, it is hard to win games.
I mean, you can say that about any singular phase of the game, but I think especially right now in Phase 2 of Season 7, just because of how tumultuous the meta changes were, this is a completely different Smite than it was in Phase 1, so it's really starting to show which of these teams are able to adapt quickly, which of these teams are coming in with diverse strategies, and hearing what Zapman said there, he is not just a team leader in the match, but it sounds like he's willing to guide his team into growing into what can be a 2-time world champion squad. He's not really worried about individual performances or even individual sets. It seems like his eyes really are locked on Worlds, and I think that's very impressive.
Well, Ghost Gaming up at the top of the standing, surprising no one. eUnited with some struggles all the way down at the bottom. We wrapped things up here with Saturday, but Sunday still has some absolutely nuts sets, especially the first one. This Radiant Sanguine one is huge. We said Sanguine had a big doubleheader this weekend playing up against SSG and Radiant, and we were not kidding. Since they already lost to SSG, Miff, they absolutely need this win tomorrow. So all of these games, all of the time are so important because you're playing everybody 3 times over a huge period of time. You do not want to have given up any extra losses early on in the phase. But that's going to do it for us here. Remember, come back tomorrow for the SPL. The SCC is going to be right before that as well. I believe that's going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern, so you get to coast with the SCC right into some SPL. That way you don't miss out on any of the competitive Smite action. Again, for me, all the other casters, everyone production that makes it happen, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.